I can imagine that you're probably not a fan of what Dominic Raab has announced today. But, you know, when he talks there about abuses of human rights with elastic interpretations, and you can see mounting public frustration at the way the government is being prevented from doing anything about the migrant crisis, what can be done? What should be done?
Well, the first thing that should be done is Dominic Raab should stop spouting nonsense, informing the British government, as the British people, misinforming them as to what happens in our courts. It's palpably not true that there have been elastic interpretations of Article 8, for example, over the last few years. In fact, unfortunately, what has happened is increasingly governments, including his own, have passed laws to instruct our courts what they are not permitted to take into account when determining these cases. Far from having confidence in our judges, this government has taken away the capacity for them to do the ordinary thing of simply assessing the case in front of them and ruling on it. And of course, that means it's increasingly necessary for things to reach to the European Court of Human Rights, because our government won't allow our courts to do their own job.
Steve, I want to ask you some questions that I'd imagine viewers might want to ask, because, of course, the British Bill of Rights has yet again bubbled up to the forefront, given that the Rwanda flights couldn't take off. And I think what most people probably want to know are who were those people who were on that flight, or supposed to be on that flight, who won their legal cases to be taken off it? Are they in desperate need? Should we be giving them shelter?
Well, all the 11 people who were the final people after legal action who were facing that expulsion when the High Court dealt with the decision, I think it was on the 13th of June now, those 11 people were people who had sought asylum in this country, as they are entitled under international law to do. None of them had any connection whatsoever with Rwanda. Some of them may well have had connections with this country. They were 11 people after they had been whittled down from 37, whom the Home Office had initially sought to place on that flight, whom legal action had shown should not be on the flight. And they were people who it is still yet to be decided by our courts whether their expulsion to Rwanda is under our laws lawful or not. What the Strasbourg court, the European court, decided, which our courts did not, was that it was improper for that flight to go ahead before it had even been decided by our courts whether it was legal to expel these people or not.
Steve, there's often a big distinction made between so-called economic migrants and those fleeing war. And I personally have little doubts that anyone getting on a boat is doing that because it looks like fun and games. I'd imagine a lot of them are pretty desperate. But the big question is, where are they coming from and why? Why and how are they getting here?
Well, the larger number of people who make the crossing of the Channel, and indeed the larger number of people who were singled out to be expelled to Rwanda, were Sudanese, Syrians, Afghans, Iranians, although not so many Iranians were put forward for the flight, and Iraqis. Now, if you look at our decision-making at the Home Office, forget the courts, at the Home Office, the vast majority of people who seek asylum in our country from those countries are found to be refugees. Not simply that they have legitimately made claims, but have been unable to substantiate them, actually have legitimately made claims that are good claims and entitle them to asylum. So it really beggars belief that they are habitually presented by our politicians, our Home Secretary, as anything other than what they are. People legitimately seeking asylum, most of whom entitled to it.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.